Hello, welcome back, dweebs. Kev here, solo on a Friday. Happy Friday for a little half and half, if you will. We're going to be talking about the Skeleton Crew. So, a little bit of Han shot first for you, but we'll also be diving deep-ish into, I guess we'll say, the themes of the show and some esoteric messages, perhaps. So it won't work as a review of this series. So if you're looking for that and you're new here, we already did that one last week. So this is kind of a part two. We'll be looking at what the great work means, any relevance to the Skeleton Crew. We're going to talk about the symbolism that I was able to find, how it ties into the show, what old ancient religions and mysticisms believed about the great work, if there are any equivalencies there. And then we'll talk about why I thought the show was going a certain way and why by the end of it I felt so unfulfilled. But before we do any of that, I'm going to say what's up to chat. What is up? What is up? We got Harls here. Is that an all-seeing eye right there? I see. Uh-oh. Oh, hello. What up, Kang? What up, Jen? Hello. This was unexpected. Skelevancy. We're never on time. Now, this time I've got no one to blame. So I was late because I wanted to get us a few, as simple as they are, a few visual aids for me on this one so you can see at least the base description of what we're going to talk about. And I guess a bit of a disclaimer here. We will be touching on religious themes. We're not going to be dunking on anyone's religion whatsoever, just going to be explaining where the great work comes from and the different we'll say cults, for lack of a better term, and not meant in a derogatory sense, that have had their own meaning for the great work, what it means to them, how that applies to Attin. And so in order to do that, we'll first have to lay out some of the symbols, why I made my jokes early on about this being a Masonic show. We'll talk about all of that stuff. And we won't go too deeply into any of it because there are a dozen rabbit holes we could find ourselves going down. If any of the stuff we begin to talk about sounds interesting, let me know. It'd be a perfect stream for my other channel, just the Kev Nevick channel, where we can hang out, kind of do whatever we want. Algorithm be damned. For instance, one of the groups we will talk about briefly would be what is deemed the Gnostic Christians, which a lot of different sects of ancient Christianity were kind of all lumped in together. They're called Gnostic. To get into all of that, you'd have to talk about the Council of Nicaea, and that in itself, the history of Christianity in Rome, would be a fun hour to 2 hour live stream that maybe we'll do on another channel. But we're going to get into a little bit of history, a little bit of ancient beliefs, and also a lot of guesswork. So forgive me if you are one who knows and you happen to know more than me. I may be selling it a little short. Some of these ideas, we're just trying to lay out the base here. Please add what you know. I will be checking the comments regularly. So if you have some thoughts on this, or if you saw something in the show that reminds you of a topic that might correlate, fire that off in the chat. We'll talk about that. That'll be a lot of fun. Kev, I swear to God, if I hear anything derogatory about Taoism, no, I could never. Oh, I only know buzzwords like Nephilim. What does Harl say? You hang out around dweeb long enough, you know about the 5-20-minute start time grace period. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's start. Forgive me, I will reference my notes a lot, so apologies there. If I sound a little odd, I'm probably reading from them directly. But the great work, what is it? why did I pop like a carny when I saw it the first time? Well, let's get up a definition for you. I think first and foremost, let's put me where I'm going to need to be. And let's see, did I grab it? Maybe I didn't grab it. So the great work, here it is. In alchemy, the magnum opus is the great work, as it says here, the transforming of prima materia into the philosopher's stone. There are a few different ways to interpret this. In alchemy, there was a literal sense to it. So you would take a base lead, and the goal was to turn it into gold. This is where you get the term solve et coagula. Also, it's similar. Think of distillation, how alcohol is made, quite fittingly alcohol. I'm just saying, alchemy. It's right there in the name, baby. But when we look at this, literally, our first connection to Skeleton Crew, obviously, Attin has the great work. And what do? They make a shit ton of gold dataries in a mint. So I guess what they're saying, potentially without saying it, is that they have found some sort of magical way to do that. And that's why this place is so sacred. Not quite sure. I think part of my half-baked lack of a thesis here is that it feels like somebody was just touching upon these themes, and that there wasn't it wasn't really it didn't come to fruition, I guess is what we'll say. Almost somebody heard about some of this stuff, thought it was cool, and wanted to add it in, or potentially stuff got cut out. You never really know. But when you have this, there was not just the physical sense of alchemy, there was the internal, metaphysical, philosophical sense, which would be still to break down your lower self and evolve into your higher self in some way, have the two meet together, sort of like the Phoenix allegory. You must destroy your current self to create your new self, the person that you need to be for the next chapter in your life. And the reason I mention that is because that's where we're going to get into some of the other themes, some of the less obvious ones, where, for instance, we'll go to the name skeleton, which is in the occult, has a few different representations, but rebirth being one of them. You see alchemy is mentioned right here, where they reference lead into gold. So it's a direct reference again to this alchemical great work process, the skeleton. Oops, I'm still covered here. Oh, well. But again, you see concept of mortality, the inevitability of death, and sometimes the cycle of life and rebirth. So once again, we just have another kind of tip of the cap to this idea of the philosopher's stone, of that ascension, if you will. So this, as we said, comes into a lot of different religious aspects here on Earth. Back in the day, I mentioned the Gnostics previously. If you look at symbols in ancient Egypt, like the pyramids, there are thoughts there of that reference. You have the base, the stone, which is again your physical self, and then you have the capstone, which they would often cover in gold, things like that. And often you'll see in artist renditionings that the capstone will be missing. The idea that is the higher self, the spirit, and that's again where you might see an all-seeing eye up there, something like that. There are also the emerald tablets of Thoth that would talk about this balancing, this as above, so below, which we will talk about again momentarily. And also, as I joked early on, some Freemasons practiced and believed this. Now, I won't speak on what the Freemasons may or may not believe now. It's still an existing social group, we'll call them. But we do know through history their different influence, and it stands to reason that over the course of 200 years, some of the beliefs might change. And if, for instance, looking at the French Revolution, where one of the 2 dozen things that led to that unfortunate time in history for my beloved French people. One of the fights was between Catholicism and Freemasonry. They went from about 100 Masonic lodges to over 1,000. Now, some of those we're still Catholic. Not all that's it's hard to just put a blanket over any and all of these things. That's why I said the same thing about the Gnostics earlier. It's think about Christianity today. How many different versions of that are there? Wherever there's a belief system, it's sort of human nature to have your own interpretations of that. So, not to say that all Freemasons were practicing this, but if you look again at the symbol there, the square and the compass, it again evokes the pyramid with the same kind of concept of perfecting your base and working your way up. So, uh, before I move on, I'm going to hop over to the comments. I haven't checked out on these in a minute. Water to wine equals alchemy. Yes. And there you go. Boom. There's a Gnostic interpretation of the Bible for you right there. Ew, French, but also ew, Catholics. You could look at the French Revolution and be, I mean, there's plenty of people to feel sorry about, but not a lot of people, not a lot of the people involved. How quickly did some of them turn on their alleged morals before the guillotine was turned on them? But hey, we got uh, equality, liberty. What was the other one? It's all about balance. The idea that everything is maintained in equal order. Exactly. So that is 100% what a lot of this stuff is going to touch on. The scales must be balanced, right? So when I use terms like perfect in the base form, that may be, again, putting it incorrectly. It's really, as Headbug puts it here, it's about that balance, becoming attuned with yourself. How would Freud put it? With like the id and the ego. You've got your conscious and your subconscious brain, the idea of just being completely in alignment and having to do the work internally. Now, of course, as with just about everything, there are going to be branches of this that turn into what I would deem predatory, in the same vein of, for my money, pun intended, televangelists, the kind of folks that would sell a prayer package or who was that guy? Was it Oral Roberts that used to sell he would just sell you anointed cloths and tell you you'd get healed. Um, those are the kind of folks that I think in the New Testament Jesus mentions throwing them out, but I'm a little rusty on my Bible. So to bring it back to the esoteric side, you will of course have the people that try to make it about obtaining riches and how can if you get through to the other side, you will work in a sense where you can achieve desired results. You dissolve, you coagulate, and then you come back a new person who's able to essentially see the thread of the universe and work in unison with the one God, for lack of a better term. A lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of, but some of these belief systems would include the all mind or the one as a reference of God, not essentially a creator being, but that we're all fragments of the creator's mind. Essentially, it's very difficult. Like I'm not necessarily deep enough to be the one to explain these, which is good because I'm not trying to convert anyone to these belief systems anyway. Um, but when we talk about these, you know what? We mentioned the as above, so below when we talk about that balance. And I do want to bring up a photo here of this mural that unfortunately is incredibly grainy. And I apologize for that. But it doesn't seem that there were any behind the scenes photos, at least none that I was able to find. When I searched for this, it's all just screenshots from the episode itself. And what's interesting here, although I would say it's a reach, I only mention it because of one of the arms. If you've ever seen an as above, so below pose, which you have seen if you've watched The Shining all the way through to the end, because Jack is doing it when he's taking that note from someone. He's got his other hand out. I'm doing all this. You guys can't even see me, but here we go. You've got one hand up and the other a little bit lower. I can't quite get it into frame. She's only really doing half of that. This is all the way out, shoulder extended. So just poking holes in my own theory here. But so I didn't really see too many references to this throughout, but let's see. Okay, so I wanted to go back to another reach that I just want to mention. I think if I do have a thesis for this one, gang, it's that sometimes, despite the human's mind desires our desire to create patterns and recognize patterns, that sometimes coincidences just happen, and this is either someone who just wanted to make passing reference to these things, or it's just kind of a coincidence. In point, the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry has a 33rd degree. And when I saw the robot who's right beneath me here, SM33, in a show called The Skeleton Crew, that's talking about the great work, I just thought, like, holy shit, guys, we're going to get some esoteric theme. We're going to get that hero's journey. It's a lot like The Matrix, right? If I'm being honest. In fact, I've seen this is in my younger days, I remember watching it was an hour and a half, probably an hour, maybe a 2 hour long presentation of someone basically laying out how Neo is a representation of Gnosticism. Again, it's a broad paintbrush, I believe. It's sort of a modern thing that we've done to kind of encapsulate a lot of ideas. So I don't know if it's correct to call it a Gnostic doctrine, but this idea of that internal growth, and that it has all these symbolisms that point to that. So I was thinking we were going to get something like that, and maybe I'm just missing it. We do have like the classic hero's journey here, the Joseph Campbell. If you think about it, we have Jod would essentially play like the wizard or the elder person. So you have your uh, with the exception of Wim, who's there willingly, you have your begrudging hero, right? That's being removed from their regular life, brought into this wild world, and then they will at some point meet an elder person. Like, it's, you can think of A New Hope when you think of these things too. So like they meet their Obi-Wan. um, they go through some trials. Something must be lost throughout the process that they gain. They will have the dark hour. I'm skipping, sorry, I'm not Dan Harmon, I don't have all 12 spots memorized. But at some point there's that low point where they have to make some massive trade. They return back home, a different person. And in this case, the mentor actually also was the obstacle at the end. So, the kids do go through the hero's journey, which I would say is a part of the great work. And I missed this in my notes, and because I had mentioned as above, so below, I said there wasn't any reference to this. Potentially, the idea that they had the planet within the barrier. Again, that could be another allusion to the great work, that they had this inside. They had the internal process. There's this giant fake planet. The fact that the barrier was an emerald green made me ooh and ah a little bit too. So again, just a lot of references to these ideas without having uh, everything there in place. So when we get to the final episode, and James and I were both disappointed. I believe James was more disappointed earlier. I think he may have liked episode 7 less than I did. Part of that, in hindsight, might have been me still holding on to hope that oh, well, they're giving us plenty of time to shell out some cool bits here in episode 8 and have a fulfilling episode 8. And then for my money, they just didn't really do that. But let's see what chat has to say. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out again, by the way. Happy Friday. I hope you have a great weekend lined up. Catholics on Twitter are nutty. Harls says too much adding up, not a coinky dink. All right. See, maybe we've got something here. And I will say, uh, I don't know what it's worth. For whatever it's worth, I think I'm going to rewatch this now again, just looking specifically for more of these types of themes. What did Harl say here? I think Joseph Campbell also said there are only like 2 stories to tell: new guy comes to town or guy leaves town. I worry that Disney took that as permission to be lazy with story ideas. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Disney, any opportunity, I think, to be lazy with a story idea would be something that they would take advantage of. So, as I'm reviewing the notes here, there are other minor coincidences or sort of potential ties. That's why I'm wearing one of my favorites. I'm wearing the pirate hat today because, of course, they're generally speaking, when you think pirates, you have the skull and crossbones. Also, that's another secret society that I don't believe are pirates. I don't know if Yale is, if they have pirates. I know they have a skull and bones fraternity, though. We won't go into conspiracy hour on that end. All right. We're going to keep it esoteric. We're going to keep it ancient. We'll stick to our conspiracies that are at least a couple hundred years old. All right. We don't need to talk about any skull and bones folks and what kind of jobs they may or may not have gotten after that. What is up, Sleek? Welcome. I have traveled far east in search of true enlightenment, but unfortunately, I only made it as far as Crete. We are talking about the great work and how it applies to the Skeleton Crew and why I was kind of disappointed in the what I feel was a missed opportunity to really tap into, as Harles mentioned with the 2 stories, Joseph Campbell, the fact that it may not be 2, but when it comes down to it, there really does seem to be a limited set of human stories, a lot of which we've passed on from time to time. And this is the portion of the discussion where I won't get too far into it. This could be another stream where we talk about the history of religion and the myths that get carried over from different beliefs, things that, for instance, the flood myth. It doesn't really matter what you believe in. At a certain point, there's a flood myth going back in time, and how and why is that stuff universal? So that stuff is a lot of fun to talk about, but we won't dive too deeply into any of that here. But yeah, I felt like there, because it's a story that's been told a million times. I think that's the title of Joseph Campbell's book, is it the hero with 1,000 faces? It just felt like there could have been something more fulfilling when you latch yourself on to the idea, whether people know it or not. Those, I guess, who are aware of it will definitely be disappointed. The idea, the great work, again, thought of as an internal ascension, an enlightenment, a leveling that you have as part of that reveal in Attin, that it's just a robot. I find myself really reaching when I try to explain that and try to make it fulfilling for myself. Case in point, uh, is the droid, in its sort of lack of emotion, because that's part of the whole thing as well, right? In order to tune into your higher self, one of the first freaking things you would have to do is learn to control your emotions. So is the droid the representative of that accomplishment? And how grimy is that? Like, I hate that idea. That's very Elon Musky for me personally. I I understand that stoicism, a philosophy that has been goddamn ruined in modern time, is another philosophy that had some of these similar ideas about internal growth and being able to face life and uh, either getting joy out of the mundane or simply learning not to get upset, not being worried about the future, all of these things. So was that the great work was to create gold out of whatever base metal they have there in the core of their planet, whatever the hell they're doing. But then also, uh, there was no ascension. It's just the droids, which in another life could have been cool. But we're talking about a franchise that has had the Trade Federation. Droids have been not only such a major part of the Star Wars landscape, but they also have been subservient to the living beings almost exclusively, I think. I mean, was that the gotcha? Was that supposed to be the hook where it's like, ooh, the droids are back in town, but they're in charge? And in fact, the best form of being is the droid, and that's why Jod iced it in half a second with a lightsaber. It like it also was kind of dumb. Like it to double down on my disappointment. The great work was revealed to be a droid is in charge, and then the droid gets defeated in 30 seconds. And so it's like, oh, it's also a stupid droid. So nope, none of that growth stuff matters too much. Like there's uh no major reveal there. And I know, for instance, uh James was wanting it to be Tack Renard, right? The Hall of Fame pirate guy. And that could have been cool. That would have certainly been more fulfilling than this. And we could have had a lot of fun with a pirate guy creating this sort of not sort of, but creating this cult like, again, esoteric. There's a great work. We got all these droids. And then you find out it's just a scumbag pirate behind the scenes. That tells a story that I think on another level touches the hearts of people everywhere. Um, I'm not going to get into any of that today, but let's check in with the comments here. We would love to hear from you. Thank you. Thank you, Stu. Let's see. Sleeks, can we do a show where we talk about how much Raw sucks now? They yes. I'll just briefly say this. They hot shot it and got out of town, didn't they? Wow. You haven't seen that. Haven't seen that in a few years. Headbug, the great work in regards to the Freemasons is the idea of completing the development of our souls. They believe that we held the spark to understanding the universe. Exactly. Thank you for putting that more eloquently. Exactly. So the idea that in the show it was a robot is so unfulfilling. What if they were being sarcastic when they said it was the great work? It's the weak work. Oh, exactly. You put great work, you put a droid card. It's mid work on a good day. So yeah, just I don't want to be too repetitive here. So I think I'll probably put a bow on this thing soon. And the only admittedly, I'm reaching here. The only thing that I found myself asking about was in regards to whim, because some believe that after one, as I mentioned, after one completes the process, that they'll understand the laws of the universe and be able to navigate the world and create their desired outcomes. And my reach here is this: it has to do with whim. Uh, Wim wanted nothing more than an adventure. He seemed to eat, sleep, and drink Jedi, always playing Jedi stories, wanted to go out, have a swashbuckling adventure, and then wouldn't you know it, on this admittedly tiny planet, but still it's a planet, he happens to stumble across the one ship that could get out and more importantly, get back in to Attin. That feels very much like the universe touched him in some way. He also aspired to see a Jedi, and through our unfortunate reveal that every Jedi we'll ever meet is tied to Order 66, we did learn that at one point Jod was training to be a Jedi, and so that like again, we're reaching big time here. But in one way or another, in a sense, that's how the universe would work too, right? You would never get it exactly how you envision it. But Wim maybe was more in tune than he thought. Perhaps he is Jedi esque. Now, I can't believe I'm about to reference this, but I feel it's worth referencing because I'm not in charge and I'm not saying it's a good idea necessarily, just trying to make a narrative stick. We've seen through shows like The Acolyte that there are different cultures that explain the force in a different way, and sometimes it's like a thread. And maybe, just maybe, Wim is like that one idiot. Oh man, what was the Asimov story that Jar Jar Binks was loosely based off of, where he's a secret idiot and he's got these magic powers? I don't mean to call Wim an idiot, but perhaps his magic power is that, or he's like Domino. He's just got luck magic. He's like the lucky Jedi dude, and he actually brought all of this stuff, as below, so above, the micro and the macro. And he brought it. He brought his dreams to life. So there was my final reach of trying to connect the any themes from the great work to the skeleton crew. Does anybody else in the chat have more thoughts on this? You want to fire anything off? I admittedly ran through some of this more quickly than I thought I would. Sometimes I underestimate the benefit of having a co-host with me. My goal was to hit 45 minutes to an hour on this bad boy, but I don't want to sit here and just repeat the same ideas. So again, if you are a nerd about history or some of these thoughts and ideas, let me know, because there is probably a better place for this than the Dweeb channel for some of those conversations. If I can find ways to tie it back into other media, I will gladly have some fun doing that. But uh, I'm a huge history dweeb. I don't know how much we've discussed all of this, but those of you who've been around for a while have probably picked up on it. So that may be something we dive into at a later date. I was just settling in. I know. I wish I had done more research. It's one of those things that um, it, I got a lot of research into the great work and some different ideas, but not a ton of them were applicable to what we watched. Headbooks, I think you're right. They dropped these little references, but forgot about them. Honestly, like, was this some sort of initiation sequence where the idea was to reference it to see if people will Google what is the great work, because they don't really get an answer from the show? So was this the plan? Somebody was trying to open the third eye of many of us. Perhaps. Maybe that's why Jude Law refuses to come home, because in a way, his hairline, much like the island of hair that I have, like, he's lucky it's still connected back there. It's still a peninsula. I've got the Zinedine Zidane, man. It's just out there. I call it the island of relevancy. But perhaps his hairline is a reference to the pineal gland, the third eye, which is also something that gets referenced a lot in great work. We got to decalcify our pineal gland. Easy for me to say, pal. We could just turn this into the conspiracy hour. We can just talk about random esoteric stuff for the day, and all the Star Wars fans can check out, like and subscribe. We can talk about the great work more later. See, now I want to go in. We got to find other ones. I bet that Harry Potter has a bunch of esoteric stuff to find. I think I read it at an age where I would be way too young to have picked up on any of it, and I haven't revisited it. But there's so much in there. I mean, just witchcraft in general. When you talk about one of the many different sects of people that practice this sort of idea of perfecting the soul, I believe, as Hedbug put it. It's not limited to the Masons. It wasn't killed off with the Gnostic Christians, as it were. I'm fairly certain that there are elements of different witchcraft. I don't know if it would be Wicca per se, but there are elements of witchcraft that belong in here as well. Freaking Aleister Crowley, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Despite what edgy teenagers think when they're wearing it on their shirt, it's not a voucher for hedonism, although that dude was admittedly weird, and I wouldn't necessarily use him as any sort of any sort of idol. I wouldn't emulate much that Aleister Crowley went to do. And I think the only cringy thing David Bowie has ever done was when he posed in like the same magician outfit as Crowley. But do as thou wilt is, again, it's that as above so below. It's again that internal. You want to fix your outside world, you have to fix yourself first. That was more the meaning as I would understand. Again, these things could be debated, and that's why it's so hard to have just a nice rollout of what all this stuff means, because so much of it is through symbolism and interpretation. And in the age of the internet, you have to sort through a lot of misinformation. Case in point, looking into all of this stuff, you wouldn't believe the number of AI slop, poorly generated videos that I would have to sort through. I am someone who occasionally enjoys listening to the philosophy of Alan Watts, and that poor guy is being copied by AIs that sound kind of like him, and they're getting mixed in with some of his real lectures, and it's a bummer. It makes it very hard to determine what is accurate. And you go to Google, and instead of getting any results, which honestly would be questionable anyway, because the first thing you're going to see is an ad. But now it's not that, it's an AI overview of here's what the search says, and you know how much that can be trusted. So there's just a lot of minds to avoid when you're trying to look into this stuff. And again, I if I would look at this and practice any of this, it would be the idea again of finding that internal balance. It wouldn't be about the think and grow rich kind of stuff. It wouldn't be about growing personal prosperity and like the creating desired outcomes. My understanding would be that if you truly achieved enlightenment, that there would be no more desired outcomes. Like you would, in a way, uh, be above that or be beyond that, so to speak, right? Like, isn't that what monks strive to do, or in some cases achieve, right? Like that would be enlightenment, right? Is not having it be conditional and just, I don't know, just being kind of zoned out, I guess. Is that and that's Taoism, right? Right, John? Is that what we got? It's nice you are here, but where is James? Well, Polar, I love the emerald, by the way. It's very fitting for today. James is not here. He's enjoying his Friday. I think he was in the chat earlier, but this one is all me and my kooky weirdness. I was an occultist in a previous life. So, I've I've got the credentials to cover this stuff, and I didn't want any of my oddities to stick to James, so we let him out easy. Let's go back to the chat. What is up? Schizo Kev is a good arc. I think they just use cool words they heard in school without much thought for the concept. Let's not go into Harry Potter and the cult themes. JK used a lot of cool motifs and wait, I lost my place. And definitely did a lot of work on research, but some of the cooler concepts are likewise just kind of abandoned. He was really nutty. You're talking about Alistair, like bat shit. Like, yeah, they're talking about, and that's, you know what, to reverse it for a second before I go back to the comments, to be fully transparent with all this stuff, to go back to the Philosopher's Stone in the physical sense, yeah, there are a lot of crazy people involved in that, trying to turn it into gold. Spoiler alert and potential trigger warning, but I do believe the ones who took it in a literal sense, when they tried to break down the, take a human down to its base form, I believe they would use, uh, they would go to the bathroom and use that as part of the spell. I know Aleister Crowley did some real weird stuff. So again, I am not trying to convert anyone to any of these ideas. Let's see what Edbug has to say. If the great work follows the same idea as the Freemasons, then ideally, this is a project where something gets completed in order to control the universe. Seems dark force magic to me. And this is where I thought it was going. I thought it would have some sort of bigger implication. Uh, without having a good idea myself, I thought it would have been something that tied back into the empire in some way, or maybe some other threat that we didn't necessarily know about. I wasn't sure, but it just felt like there would be a reason that they would continue to make all of those dataries, and they have this massive uh, giant mint just full of gold, and there's nothing behind it. I figured that it would be a front for something. What I honestly thought it was going to be, not to suggest that they do this if they have season 2. I thought they were going to give us more of the somehow, and somehow Palpatine returned. I figured the great work, again, because of a more literal interpretation of the death and rebirth concept, I figured that just had to be what it was going to be. The great work. Oh, they're bringing Palpatine back to life. I don't love it, but hey, I didn't love a lot about the prequels, and having the additional content around there helped flesh it out, and I like it a little bit more. Might not have done it. This probably, I don't think anything saves episode 9 for me, but again, I just expected them to try to find a way to explain it. And so when I see the great work and all of these things, I'm thinking, okay, these guys are going to uncover something far greater. This is going to be much bigger than just the world of Attin. And in a way, I mean, they did that because these are all kids who had never left home. So them just going to the pirate base and all of that stuff was, in a way, the children's great work, right? They left, had to completely forget who they were, maybe not completely forget, but they had to abandon who they were in order to live up to the moment that they were in. They come back as new people, prepared to face the challenges of life, and in fact take charge when the parents are not able to do that. So like, the kids get it on their smaller scale, but I thought they would do more, which, again, credit where it's due. I think I've said this before. I will have to acknowledge that I have been asking them to not tie everything into other things. So, all right, we got what we wanted there. Careful what you wish for. Gallister probably would be my name. The power of many sects of people. Yes, I love it. Callister. Throwley. Oh, is it Crowley? Have I been saying it right? Oh, it probably would be Crowley. Broly, Crowley. Yeah. Reading. I'll get better at it. As above, so below. Rip David Lynch. Yes, that was a moment of silence. Respect. Oh, life is not fair. The irony is that if you complete your goal of the great work, you would no longer be balanced with the universe itself because we mere mortals aren't meant to have that knowledge. I think there's a film that I'm about to spoil despite not being able to remember its name. So, which is great because I also can barely remember the premise, but I think it was a horror movie of some sorts. And the big reveal at the end was essentially that once you learn the meaning of life, you just die. So, kind of what Head Bug is saying here. Like, if you complete your great work, you wouldn't be here on Earth anymore, right? That would stand to reason. You'd be up in the sky floating around. You'd just be a bouncing ball of tits from outer space. Old Greg reference. Let's go. But no, you would be just like a spirit ball or something, right? And Goku would call for your energy when it was time to save Namek. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. What else does chat have to say? What was wrong with his head? I can't convert a believer. Let's go. I was also hoping for some kind of Palpatine angle. If they're trying to rehabilitate the new trilogy, then they better come up with something way cooler. I'm with you there. If they're gonna reference it, if they're gonna have a Ray trilogy, they gotta do they gotta do something. It can't just be somehow. I just had a great idea for a Star Wars movie. Palpatine as a teen. But I love it. I love it. Sounds like the Crystal Skull. That's what I was thinking, where she gets all the knowledge and then got sucked into the atmosphere. Ooh, wait a minute. That's not how the Indiana Jones movie ends, though. So hang on. I'm not. I'm not surprised, or should I say, I'm surprised, but I'm not shocked. If the Crystal Skull is in reference to existing lore, because the Indiana Jones Crystal Skull, if memory serves, spoiler alert, gang, for a movie I strongly suggest you avoid if you haven't seen. Doesn't it end with aliens? It wasn't the Crystal Skull an alien skull in Indiana Jones? Because this is way cooler. Dang. Was that the Netflix original with the How I Met Your Mother guy in it? I don't know if that's an extreme horror film. You probably don't want to see it. Yes, I barely remember because it doesn't exist. Oh, the wisdom melted her brain or something. That would track. Sort of just like you can't experience God or an angel. Remember they tried to explain an angel? It was like a flying wheat thin with a million eyes on it or something. Sounds like something H.P. Lovecraft wrote about, but there's just certain things that we wouldn't the mortal mind would not conceptualize. Aliens. Boom. There it is. If I still had hair, man, I would do that. I would puff it out like the aliens guy. You can't explain an angel. It's like a wheel with a million eyes and wings and fire and tongues. It's too much to talk about. Oh, well, we are closing in on the hour mark, so I feel happy at least that we got a little bit closer there. Again, I thank everybody for tuning in. This was an impromptu stream. I think we just mentioned it on Wednesday towards the end of the show, but this is something that if you watched all of our reviews of the Skeleton Crew, you heard me mention a lot at the beginning and then not so much as things continued. So I will likely revisit the show. And if I come up with enough notes to revisit this topic, then I will gladly do that because it definitely had fun talking about what we found so far with all of you. And we really could uh, there's opportunities for a lot of rabbit holes if there was more that I missed somewhere along the way, which could be possible because at a certain point I kind of gave up on it. And so maybe there could be a few more subtle references that I missed along the way. Angels are nice guys. They said, be not afraid. That's right. If they look like nice guys, they wouldn't have to tell you not to be afraid. Yeah, every nice person I've ever met has immediately said, don't be scared, bro. that was what that's what David Shoemaker said to Chris Hansen. Don't be scared, bro. I'm just getting a cigarette. The Angels are fine until they want the apocalypse to happen so they can have a war. Or if until they fall from heaven and start playing music or selling souls for music, I think. I don't know. I never read Paradise Lost. Do not quote Robbie at me, Sleek. I will melt. You are very welcome, Harles. Thanks for the esoteric weirdo stream. Fair that it would be brief. Skeleton Crew didn't give us much to work with other than broad concepts. Yeah, and if there's more to revisit, we will definitely do it. This is the kind of weirdo stuff that I do enjoy talking about. Full disclosure, cards on the table, since it's just me here anyway. Break character for a minute. With the exception of what I mentioned previously, when it comes to anybody who uses religion to get money or power from anyone else, any of my vitriol, any of the venom I spit on shows, if I'm ever mocking, let's be honest, it's Christianity, right? That's the one that I pick at the most. It is those that use that to abuse others. In all honesty, I love talking about this stuff. I think it's a lot of fun to just, I don't know, think about. Like, there's endless possibilities. As far as I'm concerned, none of our religions are correct. They all have certain ideas that overlap that I think we all agree on. Things that what makes a person a good person, the rules we should live by. What the Book of the Dead has essentially the same 10 commandments. And so I think there are certain things that we all agree would make life better if we abided by them. But when it comes to philosophy, spiritualism, religion, I do enjoy talking about that. So probably not the forum for it here on Dweeb. But if you ever want to get weird again and talk about ancient philosophies, cults, religions, any of that kind of stuff, or even maybe we can look into some more modern cults and talk about those. Let me know either in the comment section or hit me up on Twitter, tag me in the Discord, and I'll get something set up on my channel. So that's youtube.com at Kev Nevick, and we'll do some stuff over there because it doesn't really matter what I do over there. All right. Algorithm be damned. It might be it might be investigation footage or interrogation footage. It might be a Bitcoin stream. All right, let's check the chat one last time before we get on out of here. Looks like Sleek is just quoting Robbie Williams, a head bug. That makes me laugh. I just learned today. I thought you were going to teach me who that was and why anyone thought it would be worth spending $100 million to try to sell to American audiences. But apparently, Jay doesn't get it either. I think this is in reference to the Angels. That's how I always introduce myself. It's okay. Don't freak out. I'm a normal version of the thing that I am. I thought you meant the other kind of melt. I am as I was intended to be, and that is not entirely normal. Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about jorking it way more than the Bible does. Well, maybe we don't agree on everything. It's good to have that discourse. Sleek, the Wicked Witch of the West, has an aversion to water, much like Headbug's aversion to Robbie Williams. Man, we will rage. Oh, so you think Elon was just waving high or what? Okay. All right. Ancient Rome topics will also have to be discussed on the other stream. I believe that was a Roman salute. Certainly looked like it, didn't it? But perhaps it was done on accident. Oh boy. Oh boy. I do love talking about ancient Rome, however, and the cultures that fought against them. So a lot to learn. A lot could be learned from ancient Rome that won't be learned now because some dickhead former kickboxer decided to just talk about it way too. We got all like the not all. We got some real shitheads that talk too much about Rome and about Stoicism, and there would be a lot to learn, but you're not going to learn it from them, and you probably won't learn it from me because I am no historian. I just am a nerd who likes to study history. So, woo! What is this? What does the Academy have against Villeneuve? They refuse to nominate him. They don't like French Canadian people. That is why really nothing. I apologize. One of the things I am not um in tune with is the awards when it comes to nominations or who wins them. So I this is news to me and it's kind of blowing my mind. I guess you could say I'm not doing too good after that. Like, what do you have to see? It's because of the French part, Headbug says. I touche. The last time I complained about this was when they weren't allowed to be nominated for best soundtrack because they'd used too much of their previous soundtrack, which is really stupid. I can understand the intent of that rule, i.e., if you used someone else's work uh, and then for more than 20% or whatever the rule, I don't remember, it's some arbitrary number that they've set. But when it's your own soundtrack from your previous movie, like that's just doing good work. That might be doing great work, pun intended. I Why would you be punished for bringing back musical themes from your first movie that would rightfully fit there and say, "Oh yeah, you can't be nominated for best soundtrack because you're not allowed to copy from your own homework." It's ridiculous. Have you heard of this thing called the Academy Awards, also known as the Oscars? You got a little bald guy, right? Everybody gets a bald guy that wins. Yeah, I remember him. Okay, but if it's a series, it's going to have musical motifs for characters and story beats. Right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they punish them for doing what you should absolutely do with with the sequel. Um, I can't imagine no nominations. There are a few different things that I would imagine, and I would have to look at the nominees to decide who I would kick off. But Jesus, man, nothing for the cinematography. Nothing. It's because Quebecois is like French but worse. I actually relate to that one, Sleek, specifically. This little inside baseball. As you all know, I also hail from Gaul. All right. My people came from France. And our family at one point in time made a pit stop up in the future 51st state of America, allegedly. I hope not. Please, God. No, 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 no. I digress. I have a lot of family in Canada, and my French mother, or my French grandmother, and my mother, who speaks French because she was in France. That's where she learned how to speak it. Was in Canada part time, and then has came to America. Neither of them can understand my aunt, who speaks that Quebecois. So they don't have that in Duolingo, I hear. So there you go, little Kev lore to get us to the hour. You're not allowed to plagiarize your own music, apparently. Dune 2 is nominated, bro, but not Denis. Oh. My bad. Okay. Heard, misunderstood that one. So that's my I still How's the film industry going to continue now that Josh Brolin is quitting acting because Denis didn't get nominated? Is that? I'm not sure the film industry can go on without Josh Brolin movies. I I don't think I hate everything Josh Brolin has done. I am trying to think of some spots that I liked, but that reinterpretation of Old Boy, it was one of the worst things personally that I've ever seen or experienced. That one, oh, and I don't know necessarily that it was his fault, but he is the lead in that, and I hate it, and I hate that it exists. And so I I'm with you. How will we go on without Josh Brolin? The Hobbit trilogy was so rushed that they recycled a bunch of the OG trilogy score. They weren't mindful about it, so they have a scene where Thorin is being all badass and moody and heroic, but they use the Witch King's theme. So they were just copying and pasting with with just like, yeah, my God. And I get it. I don't want to call it lazy because you said it was rushed. So I feel for anybody going through some crunch. What up, Advent? Welcome to the show, brother. We are almost out of here, but I'm glad to see you. We got there. Harl's finished the story. All right. I think we will head on out of here. Oh, wait, there's more. That's the theme. They use Sauron's Lieutenant music as a good guy's walk on music. Oh, man. Why do you think that Jeff Bana? Oh, I think he would be. Oh God, I'm sorry, I should have pulled that one up. Man, I really couldn't speak on that. You really don't know. I won't get all. It's not for me to preach to anybody, but rest in peace to that guy. And call somebody. I don't know the number, but if you're ever feeling that way, please call somebody. And on that, unfortunately, somber note, we'll pivot and say happy Friday, gang. I hope you enjoy your weekend. I will update you on the next impromptu stream. Lots of things coming up, lots of things in the works over here at dDweeb. If you want to hang out with Danny and I on Sunday, we will be there Sunday at 11 a.m. for the Clout Route. Keep an eye out. I've heard rumblings, it might start at 10:30 instead of 11, but I don't know. So keep an eye out. We might start a little early this Sunday. We also have our first scripted Clout Route video in the works, almost completed. So that'll be coming out very soon. I look forward to sharing that with all of you. And for those who have mentioned, I think if Advent is still here, wanting to hear some of my commentary, I got approval from the bosses over at Carnage Media. Their last pay-per-view that we did happened while I was away, so I did not call those fights. So I'm going to be able to pick a couple and just do commentary with them. I need some practice. I've got about 12 freaking events coming up the next few months. So if you're interested in hanging out with me and watching some combat sports, at Carnage Media PPV is where we'll be doing that. And anywho, once again, guys, thank you all so much for hanging out with me here. And I will catch you all next time as soon as I find the outro video button to press. All right, we'll see you later, gang. Peace.